Barakata Yahweh, Barakata Yahabushai, Bahasham, Barakahakwadash, Barakatum. First and foremost, I want to give all praises, glory, and infinite honors to Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahabushai. Double honors to the apostles and elders, a great millstone who rule and teach well. And peace and salutations to you sincere Akim out there, pushing this word in truth and sincerity to the four corners of the globe. May you brothers endure until the end. This is the brother Ra'aya with another video. And in this video, I'll be profiling an article from Newsweek.com titled, U.S. Preparing for Direct Confrontation with Russia in the Arctic. And this is biblical prophecy taking place right before our very eyes. All the pieces are being set in place for World War III to take place. And the two main combatants are going to be the United States of America and Russia. And Russia is actually going to be the nation that's going to lead these other nations into shooting nuclear missiles onto the United States of America. And that Arctic Ocean region is going to play a significant part in that nuclear exchange. But first, I'm going to go to Revelation chapter 9, verse 12. One woe or destruction is past, referring to World War I. And behold, there come two woes more hereafter, World War II, which is past, and World War III, which is quickly coming, and will go nuclear. And like I just said, the two main combatants in biblical prophecy is going to be Russia and the United States of America. This is Jeremiah chapter 50, verse 9. For lo, I will raise and cause to come up against Babylon. And that's not talking about the Neo-Babylonian Empire. That's talking about the virgin daughter of Babylon, Babylon the Great, that whore, the United States of America, an assembly of great nations from the North Country speaking of Russia, because what's north of the United States of America? Let's go to a map of the Arctic Ocean region. As we can see, we've got the U.S. right there, Babylon, that Arctic Ocean region, and then what to the north? Russia, that North Country. And for the last couple of years, Russia has been heavily building back up its military capabilities, nuclear included, in that Arctic Ocean region. And it's a well-known fact that Russia shooting missiles from itself to the north across that Arctic Ocean region, as well as shooting missiles from its assets in that Arctic Ocean region to reach its targets in the U.S. would be the shortest trajectory time for those missiles to reach the U.S. And best believe the heads of the U.S. government and military know this, hence why they're trying to play catch up and prepare accordingly to try to combat and defend themselves from Russia in that Arctic Ocean region. Hey, but according to biblical prophecy, it's all futile. And that assembly of great nations from the North Country are not only speaking of Russia's allies like China, Iran, and North Korea, but also the allies of the United States of America like Britain, France, Germany, these other NATO nations that at some point during that third woe, World War III, are going to turn against the U.S., Babylon, and ally themselves with Russia, and they're all together going to shoot 200 million nuclear missiles onto the United States of America, which is going to turn it into the biblical lake of fire from sea to shining sea, and then a desolate, uninhabitable wasteland afterwards. Read Revelation chapter 17, verse 16, and the 10 horns which thou sawest upon the beast, the 10 horns speaking of the EU or European Union, beginning with the first 10 common markets of the EU back when it was known as the European Economic Community, and the beast, speaking of NATO, these shall hate the whore that rideth upon the beast, the United States of America, and shall eat her flesh and burn her with fire, nuclear fire. And they shall set themselves in array against her. From thence she shall be taken. Their arrows shall be as of a mighty expert man. And those arrows are symbolically speaking of those nuclear missiles, because when the prophets saw these visions thousands of years ago, they didn't know what a modern day nuclear missile was. And they certainly weren't going to say a Satan II or a Zircon hypersonic missile in the scriptures. They were going to describe it with what they knew during their times to the best of their abilities. Ancient weapons of war like bows and arrows, spears, javelins, etc., etc. None shall return in vain. So back to this article, the title should really read, prophetically, Babylon preparing for direct confrontation with the North Country in the Arctic. And when we see information like this come out, it just lets us know that our salvation is nearer than when we believed, and the total destruction of this whore, Babylon the Great, the United States of America, is at hand. The U.S. National Guard has held cold weather drills amid the prospect that the Arctic could be, will be, a future flashpoint for hostilities between Russia and the U.S. And when things really kick off up there, it's not going to be some prolonged winter war with tanks and soldiers and fighter jets. It's going to be quick because those nuclear missiles are going to be flying across the north. The 10-day Northern Strike 23 military exercises in Camp Grayling, Michigan, came as President Vladimir Putin's invasion of Ukraine has raised the chances high tensions between Moscow and the West may spill over into the Arctic region. In visiting the site of the exercises, which took place between January 20th and the 29th, the Military Times reported U.S. Army General Dan Hokanson, chief of the National Guard Bureau, watched live fire practice on the M777 howitzer, one of the NATO weapons used by the Ukrainian forces. Field artillery was the focus of the drill, which saw the participation of troops from Latvia, a Baltic state also keeping a watchful eye on the threat posed by Russia. Malte Hampert, founder and senior fellow of the Arctic Institute think tank, said that the exercises by the U.S. military reserve force symbolize the U.S. really stepping up more and more to the plate when it comes to the Arctic region. It's not preparing for World War III, he told Newsweek, which, with that statement, this guy's either being disingenuous or just doesn't know what's going on, because according to scriptures, we know that World War III, that third woe, is coming. And best believe that the higher-ups in the U.S. government understand this and understand the significance of that Arctic Ocean region. Back in Jeremiah chapter 50, I'm going to jump down to verse 43. The king of Babylon hath heard the report of them. And the king of Babylon is speaking of who? Your presidents and these higher ups in the government, but ultimately, who runs Babylon? The elites. This is just a corporation for them, for the Rothschilds, Rockefellers, DuPonts, the Gettys, the Massimos, the Merovingians, you name it. But I digress. That's something else. Let's keep it simple to the king of Babylon, referring to the president of the United States of America, these other higher-ups in power. And whose report hath they heard? The report of the prophets of the Most High, the men of the Lord, out on the highways and byways preaching this word, as well as putting up video epistles like this, showing through scriptures that Russia is going to play a significant part from the north around that Arctic Ocean region in taking down this whore Babylon. Hence, why they're preparing accordingly. And his hands waxed feeble. Anguish took hold of him, and pangs as of a woman in travail, because when they hear the message from the prophets dealing with Babylon or the United States of America in the scriptures, it's not a happiness, flowers, sunshines, lollipops, or anything like that. It's lamentations, mournings, woes, destruction, that no matter what the U.S. does to try to defend itself, it's ultimately going to be destroyed by nuclear fire. It's just another step which shows that the U.S. understand Russia, the North country, is a hostile nation, and that hostility can potentially extend into the Arctic, which was always seen as a region of exceptionalism. NATO allies like Norway and potential new alliance members, Sweden and Finland, would be counting on U.S. support if there was any confrontation in the region. We've got to be able to go wherever that potential fight may be, and we need to provide presence there, Hokanson told the Military Times. 2 weeks after Putin invaded Ukraine, members of the Arctic Council decided to pause participation in the body, thus cutting cooperation with Russia and its neighbors in the region. Even with its focus on supplying its effort, Russia has continued expanding its military bases in the Arctic over the last year, with radar bases and runways, and what can take off from runways, planes carrying nuclear weapons, being improved in the region, CNN reported in December, citing satellite images. And if the king of Babylon hath heard the report of the prophets, he best believe the North country, these Russians, have heard the report as well. All the higher-ups of these different heathen nations watch the prophets. They understand that the true prophets, who are chiefly through GMS or Great Millstone, as well as the brothers that come in the spirit of GMS, are properly breaking down the scriptures and showing exactly what's going to take place prophetically. So everybody's preparing accordingly, following after the step of the prophets, and it will be revealed that everything that GMS, beginning with our apostle elders on down, have been prophesying was 144% truth in Yahweh Bahashem, Yahweh Shai. Meanwhile, the Center for Strategic and International Studies, CSIS, said in a Moscow report published in January that Moscow's use of hybrid tactics in the Arctic seems to be increasing in both frequency and severity. This includes allegations denied by Moscow that it was behind the sabotage of the Nord Stream pipelines and undersea cables in the Arctic and near Arctic. In October, the U.S. government-wide Arctic strategy said that Russia's invasion of Ukraine has raised geopolitical tensions in the Arctic and created new risks of unintended conflict. They have heard the report of them, and they were afraid and had pangs like a woman in travail. Russia's military interests in the Arctic are mostly defensive, according to the CSIS. These included protecting its second strike sea-based nuclear deterrent by the Kola Peninsula, its oil and gas megaprojects like the Yamal LNG and Vostok oil ventures, and the Northern Sea Route, whose role as a future trade thoroughfare is likely to be increased by global warming. Russia also has offensive goals in the Arctic, the CSIS said, such as using it as a staging ground for power projection, that assembly of nations unto the North country that shall take Babylon with her arrows, as a possible site for hybrid activities to intimidate European Arctic countries, not to mention the scene of an unlikely but not unthinkable wider NATO-Russia conflict. That's it with this article. But hey, as we can clearly see, biblical prophecy is taking place right before our very eyes. And Apostle Tahar has named 2023 to be the hopeful year that all prophecies come to their fulfillment. And when we see information like this, again, it just lets us know that our salvation is nearer than when we believed. And 2023 could very well be the year that we see salvation. We see the destruction of our enemies, and the elect of the nation of Israel are saved by Yahushai Hamashiach, whom the world ignorantly refers to as so-called Jesus Christ. And Abaratazah, I'm of that elect number. But if 2023 isn't the year, again, information like this just goes to show us that it is very close. But now let's get back to these prophecies. Back in Jeremiah chapter 50, verse 41, Behold, a people shall come from the north, that north country, Russia, and a great nation, and many kings shall be raised up from the coasts of the earth, from the four corners of the earth, that assembly of great nations, not just Russia's allies, but America's own allies that are going to turn against her. They shall hold the bow and the lance. Again, speaking of these nuclear weapons, and what do bows shoot? Arrows. So this is speaking of the silos and other launch platforms for these nuclear missiles. They are cruel and will not shew mercy. Their voice shall roar like the sea, and they shall ride upon horses. Everyone put in array like a man to the battle against thee, O daughter of Babylon, that virgin daughter, that whore, the United States of America. And when you go to Psalms 137, verses 7 to about 9, you'll see that the biblical Edomites are these so-called white people, which these Americans are synonymous with the daughter of Babylon. Now I'm going to jump up to verse 40. As the Most High overthrew Sodom and Gomorrah and the neighbor cities thereof, saith Yahweh. And besides being known as the daughter of Babylon in the scriptures, the United States of America is also known as spiritual Sodom in Egypt, as pursuant to Revelation 11, verse 8. It's very easy to see why the U.S. is known as spiritual Sodom. It's the number one nation that pushes the alphabet lifestyle, beginning with LG, onto the rest of the planet. Through Hollywood, its social media, and geopolitical and socioeconomic policies. Just look at some of the movies that have come out in the past couple of months. A movie called Bros, which dealt with two Sodomians dealing with each other. And then a Disney children's movie called Strange World, which had a alphabet teenage couple in it. And how did the Most High overthrow ancient Sodom and Gomorrah? With fire and brimstone from the sky. And he's going to overthrow this modern day Sodom and Gomorrah with modern fire and brimstone. Those 200 million nuclear missiles, saith Yahweh. So shall no man abide there, neither shall any son of man dwell therein. When those nuclear missiles hit this place, it's going to be turned into the biblical lake of fire, from sea to shining sea, and then that desolate, uninhabitable wasteland afterwards, where man, woman, or child will never set foot on ever again. And after a time, only desert creatures that can survive in harsh environments are going to dwell here. Verse 39, therefore, the wild beasts of the desert with the wild beasts of the islands shall dwell there, and the owls shall dwell therein, and it shall be no more inhabited forever, which just goes to show this isn't talking about ancient Babylon, which is in modern-day Iraq, because clearly people are still dwelling there to this day. Neither shall it be dwelt in from generation to generation. And when everything's said and done, the former United States of America is going to stand as an eternal memorial as to what a wicked kingdom looked like, how not to govern the earth, and what the judgment and punishment was for afflicting the apple of the Most High's eye, the true children of Israel, who were known as the so-called Negroes, Latinos, and Native Americans today. So that's it with this video. And with this video, I hope you sincere Akim and Akwath were edified. Just keep strong. As we can clearly see, we're almost out of this final wicked captivity of the heathen nations, chiefly of the Edomites, primarily from Babylon, the United States of America. And as always, I'm going to say Abad Babal, Kwam Yasharala, and until next time, Shalom.